So this next set of questions actually goes into that future growth conversation. So the first question in this section says that we are a resort community, especially during the summer months. How will you balance the needs of our residents and property owners versus those of renters?
The renters are important to us. They drive the tourism engine that we all live on, basically. But as far as a commissioner, there's only one group of people I serve, and it's not the renters. The group of people I serve are you, the residents here. And so there's not a balance between the two in my mind. It is purely I serve one group of people, and that is you.
Some of the present commissioners and mayor claim that the 2025 CAMA Land Use Plan was a guide to assist future decisions and plans for our town. Yet, it did not mean we had to do everything that was proposed. There were many contradictions within this plan which led some commissioners, planning board members, as well as residents and property owners to want to revise and/or eliminate many sections. Yet, there were very few changes made. One commissioner proposed the final draft be presented to the board for final vote. Unfortunately, that proposal did not pass. Instead, the proposal passed to make certain changes and automatically accept the new CAMA plan without being presented again to the Board of Commissioners. If you are elected/re-elected, how would you handle such a controversial decision or proposal?
There are not several questions in that question,
There is. Hey, I'm reading as they were submitted. Sorry, that's not my question.
Good answer.
Yes, sir.
I was chosen to sit on the 2017 steering committee for that land use plan. And I think I have a pretty good beat on land use plan and what its purpose is and its intended use. I think the commissioners at the meeting where the land use plan was approved with the changes or approved as long as the changes were made, I think they got some of the quotes exactly right, saying things like it's a guide, it's a rough draft or a rough outline of what we want to see happen, but it can certainly be deviated from if need be. And I know from my personal experience, the 2017 plan, we had a chart showing projected growth for Ocean Isle Beach. But as you can see, when you drive around Ocean Isle Beach and you look at the surrounding area, the area has grown much faster than we ever anticipated. So there can be changes, and fortunately, the land use plan can be deviated from. As far as I think the final question there, we've all heard the cliche "trust but verify." The company that was contracted to put together this land use plan for us, they were vetted, bonded, experienced, came with good credentials, but still I would like to have seen the final draft come before the Board of Commissioners for the final approval, rather than approving it contingent upon certain general changes being made, which in the wording of a document like that, the wording matters. So I would have liked to have seen it come back in front of the Board of Commissioners for a final once over and final approval before it was all done.
So the next question would be, what ideas do you have to protect our natural resources, wetlands, and green spaces?
Natural resources, wetlands, and green spaces are protected by our ordinances, also protected by the state restrictions of what different types of wetlands, for example, can be built upon, what type cannot. I think, but our good, strong set of town ordinances is what will protect those things for us, and they need to be important enough to us that we go ahead and take measures now to protect those areas, than waiting till after the fact and playing catch up, or waiting until after the fact and saying to ourselves, wow, we should have done something different back whenever. But the time to protect those things is now.
If you were given the authority from the state assembly and county, what zoning changes would you make to protect the character of Ocean Isle Beach in appearance, density, types of commercial uses, etc.?
I would like to be able to go back to where we could regulate how many bedrooms a specific house can have, to cut back on both traffic and, I guess, density at that point. Read the question again, please. Let me get all parts of it.
If you were given the authority from the state assembly and county, what zoning changes would you make to protect the character of Ocean Isle Beach in appearance, density, types of uses, etc.?
Well, I've had this part of this conversation with several residents here and several commissioners, and I know they're not going to be happy because we don't agree, but I would like to see some of the commercial area on the west end of the island that is undeveloped at this point. I would like to see that reduced. I would like to see that into single-family homes, which is the character of the bulk of the island. Instead of having a commercial area here along Causeway Drive, having another separate large commercial area on the west end.
Do you see the need for a transition plan in place for the town government over the next 3, 5, and 10 years? And if so, what are those plans? Do you believe we will be adding commission seats due to the growth of the town?
To add commissioner seats would require a change to our town charter, which currently shows a mayor and 5 commissioners. I would be hesitant to expand that because the more, becomes a much less cohesive group when you have a large number of decision makers. And we're not looking for perfect cohesion for everybody to walk in lockstep, but we are looking to be able to eventually get to some kind of decision when the vote is made to move forward with whatever topic or whatever issue we're working on.
How do you propose to monitor the growth so the island isn't in gridlock during the seasonal months?
Boy, if I knew the answer to this.
That's a tough one.
And it might take more than 2 minutes. No, we need to reach out to traffic engineers, traffic experts, North Carolina Department of Transportation. We do have some physical limits here. We have a 2-lane causeway, we have a 2-lane bridge, and we have 25 or more thousand people on the island each week during the summer. There are some changes that could be made. I mean, it would take a lot of information, a lot of communication with a lot of different stakeholders. But would it be possible to split up the arrival and departure date to some on Saturday, some on Sunday? No, the majority are Saturday. Actually, the house that is across the street from my house rents during the summer months, and they're Sunday to Sunday. But there are a lot of nuances that go with making a change like that. The rental companies, the cleaning crews, the renters themselves, would they be okay with a Sunday to Sunday, or do they prefer a Saturday to Saturday? But all these things need to be looked into because the weekends, changeover day especially, are a mess if you have to get out in traffic, and we need to be imaginative. We need to try options, and we need to reach out to experts that have dealt with this kind of stuff before, because we're not the first town, we're not the only town to deal with a rapid growth. And we need to find solutions that have worked for other towns and see if they'll work for us as well.
Next question. Would you propose or support the current building codes being changed to reflect the proper amount of parking spaces at each home? And there's an explanation attached. There are many homes that advertise 12 to 16 bedrooms and sleep up to 48, and there aren't enough parking spaces for said houses. Parking in the roadways and blocking sidewalks are a fire safety concern.
Blocking roadways and blocking sidewalks is unacceptable, and that's an enforcement issue that falls on our parking contractor and our police department. So that's unacceptable regardless. As far as our ordinances and what are required, we do have some fairly strong ordinances that dictate and regulate this type of stuff, even to the point where some of the larger homes are requested to have off-site parking. If the house itself or the parking at the property itself cannot facilitate the number of cars that are going to be there, then they are required or asked to park elsewhere and then shuttle or however they choose to get people back and forth. But the problem is when we spill onto the roadways, the problem is when we spill onto the sidewalks and into the bike lane, and that's an enforcement issue that needs to be enforced. It needs to be enforced more rigidly in my mind.
What is your vision of our community development in the shopping and restaurant district, both on and off the island on the causeway?
We don't have a whole lot of control over what businesses would like to be here. If we want to recruit businesses, then I go back to what I started with. We need to listen to the residents of the beach here and see what they would like to have, what type of businesses they would like here, and in turn reach out and recruit those type of businesses. Do you want more restaurants? Do you want a specific type of restaurant? Reach out and try to recruit those folks to come here.
Would you be in favor of future building being banned on the tenuous areas of the island, such as the far east end, to protect the integrity of what is built on the island?
Tenuous is a good word.
Tenuous is a good
It's
word.
a very good word.
Right.
This is going to take more than 2 minutes, Parker. So get warmed up. Restricting building on a piece of property that somebody owns, and we use the East End as an example in some of the Facebook posts we all read about the East End. If you're going to restrict what somebody can build on a piece of property, you have to have a concrete, definable reason to do so. And some of the, you see a lot of comments, this area or that area should not be built on. Well, that's an opinion. That's not a concrete reason to not build at a certain location, like it's a bird sanctuary, so it's protected, or there's a conservation easement on that property, so it is protected, or it's a specific type of wetland that cannot be filled, and therefore it's protected. And then we get into different ordinances that would also limit building or limit the size of buildings. But look at us, for example. You know, there are a lot of folks who might say the East End was too risky to build. Well, there are a lot of people who look at us living on the beach here on sand on a barrier island who would also say, maybe where we live, a little too risky to build. So we look in the mirror, it's kind of hard to say what is too risky. That's kind of too risky is kind of in the eyes of the owner. And so to say something is too risky to build, unless there's a specific concrete reason you can give that somebody cannot build, we can't restrict all building, or we can't restrict the building that we may think is unwise or too risky in our minds. We need something concrete. We need a restriction that can be written and defined to not allow some building to take place.
Would you be in favor of a turn lane coming down 4 Mile Road, similar to Beach Drive, or would you support any additional roundabouts, and why?
I would support a turn lane, because with all the development we see along 4 Mile Road, just have traffic stopped to make a left turn will be making it even slower and more gridlocked than it already is. Traffic circles along Beach Drive, off the top of my head, I would say there is only one entrance at this point from the retreat, and when proposed from Ocean Isle Palms, that is within our ETJ. None of that is within our town limits, but within our ETJ, we may have a say with North Carolina DOT, but not being within our town limits, we won't have but so much of a say. So roundabouts, I think it would depend on my support or lack of support, depending on the exact location, but a turn lane I would certainly be in favor of to help traffic that is turning move a little bit more freely.
How can, quote, we the town be proactive in facing growth instead of reactive to growth going forward so that we can control what we want the town to look like? This includes both residential growth and commercial growth within the town limits.
I think I got real close to that before. Our ordinances that we have in place that regulate what can be built, where it can be built, how it can be built. We can have a set of appearance code ordinances that define what buildings must look like. And we've been to places where businesses modify the look of their structure to accommodate the building code that's where they are located. Good, strong set of ordinances that we think up ahead of time and we write ahead of time and have in place when businesses and residents come here is necessary to be able to make those things happen for us.
What is your position on building or rebuilding, if over 50% damaged, in inlet hazard areas on the island? Currently, residential building is allowed in these areas. Read the first part of that again. Yeah. What is your position on building or the rebuilding, if it's over 50% damaged, of homes or houses in the inlet hazard areas on the island?
That decision comes from not from the local level, but from a state level. That's a little bit above our pay grade local level. That's kind of asking what I think about it. I think it's up to the property owner. If they have the risk tolerance to build in an inlet hazard area and they have full disclosure that it is an inlet hazard area or other hazards that may pertain to their piece of property, as long as there's full disclosure, they know the information, it's up to each individual builder or each individual homeowner to determine their level of risk tolerance.
So if you are elected, how will you advance improvements to the community center?
I think the path that has been proposed already is the path to take. Have contractors look at the structure after we decide what we want to have in that structure, what type of improvements, what we want the finished product to look like. Have some people who do that type of work give us an estimate, give us a timeline, give us an idea what would be involved. But the first part of it, the starting point, is for us as a residents to decide what we want the finished product to look like, what we want it to be able to be used for.
If elected, what strategic initiatives will you introduce and drive to minimize the impact of oppressive state and county-driven overdevelopment that is compromising the culture and lifestyle of OIB?
Oppressive what?
Oppressive state and county-driven overdevelopment. So what strategic initiatives will you introduce and drive to minimize the impact of the overdevelopment that's compromising the culture and lifestyle of OIB?
We're back to traffic, we're back to congestion, we're back to what our beach accesses can handle. It involves parking. I think we need to break that up into several different topics instead of one great big topic. And what part of this results of the oppressive overdevelopment do we want to actually talk about? I think it's a one issue at a time, not a great big umbrella topic. So I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I'm not going to sit here and have Parker yell at me here in 2 minutes when I barely get started on that. I think it needs to be divided up into separate topics.
In 2022, the terminal groin on the east end of Ocean Isle Beach was completed. Included in the permit was a requirement by U.S. Fish and Wildlife for 2 light surveys. In May and July of 2022, the town of Ocean Isle Beach hired Coastal Protection Engineering to perform these light surveys. Both surveys identified 7 streetlights with the following, quote, recommended directional shielding / flat front light type, end quote. To date, the town of Ocean Isle Beach has not made the recommended changes. Do you support the town of Ocean Isle Beach making and absorbing the cost recommended to these 7 streetlights? Please explain your answer.
For 7 streetlights, yes, I think the town should make those changes. We paid for 2 light surveys. Why would we not follow through with what the surveys recommended?